each turn, the way not overshooting a turn or jumping just so you land on the downslope
Yeah,
of the next
yeah.
ramp?
So there's been a massive change in the last 15 years of RC racing, okay? If you'd asked me, if I knew what I knew now, if I was who I was now, but 15 years ago, you know, 1999, 2000, like consistency was king, right? Like that's all that mattered. If you watch Kinwald and Matt Francis and Mark Pavidis and those guys back in the day with brushed motors, nickel metal cells, like it was all about your consistency. Like those guys never put a wheel wrong. And the way they won the race was by never wrecking, by running, you know, they ran it, easy way to put it is they ran it 95%, right?
Slow and steady.
Slow and steady wins the race. There's been, like I said, there's been a massive changeover with brushless and LiPo. Our cars have so much power now and so much torque compared to their weight that it's changed the driving style, okay? And guys like, I mean, Mayfield is the prime example. If you watch Mayfield wheel and any of his cars, if you watch him on Live RC or go look up on YouTube a video he's got, like that guy drives the piss out of his car, right? And this, getting back to your question, he's not hitting the same lines every lap. He's going into the corner as hard as he can and just focused on carrying corner speeds, hitting early apexes and throttling out as fast and as hard as he can. So in the last 15 years, we've gone from being as precise and as repetitive and consistent as possible to kind of this young gun, like, I'm going to throw my car around. I'm shooting for the fastest lap time every lap I hit the track. And if 15 years ago, if Kinwald would have tried to drive like that, he would have wrecked once, and that was it. Like, he couldn't make up that time. But because Mayfield has such a fast lap, he can wreck once and still out-qualify that old guard kind of driving style. So I think the cliche thing that everyone's expecting me to say is that it's important to hit your same line every lap. It's important to be super consistent. But that's wrong. Like, the way to drive now is to push yourself and find that fast lap and run as hard as you can. Now, if you're wrecking more than twice a race, you got to dial it back. You got to find your, you know, Mayfield's not wrecking every lap. Like, that's how he makes it work. But if you're never wrecking, like, you need to push yourself further.
I'd like to add something, and that is that when Paul says Mayfield isn't perfectly on the line every lap, he's never more than 4 or 5 inches off. Okay? But for him, the perfect line is only about this wide. Okay? And the amazing thing is we're talking way out in the corner of the track. He's still this close to the bike.
I would add a good tool you can use for yourself. You guys have RC Scoring Pro here? Or no?
No, we'd be
Okay, does it print like an average lap and then like top 5, top 10, that kind of thing, or consistency, right? So, like, most of the tracks in Ohio use RC Scoring Pro. It's kind of the standard. And it'll print out, if your guys' printout does the same thing, it'll print out your fast lap, your top 5 average, and your top 10 average, right, and so on and so forth. And I find that when I look at a heat sheet, I look at my fast lap and I look at my top 5. And I'm looking for a gap of 2 to 3 tenths between my fast lap and my top 5. Okay? If there's only a 1/10 gap, I'm not driving hard enough. I'm not pushing myself because that fast lap isn't fast. It's not as fast as it could be. And if there's a 6, 7, 8 tenths gap, that means I'm not consistent enough. Because sure, I had a hero lap, but my car, you know, I wasn't able to repeat it at all. So that's a really good tool. Like, don't look at necessarily all your laps, but look at your fast lap and your top 5. And then look at your top 10. There should be another 2/10 gap between that top 5 and that top 10. And that's a tool that I use and I think you can use to really evaluate your run. You know, when you see that 2 to 3/10 gap between each of those, like, that was a good run. That means you're kind of right where you should be. But if it's bigger, you're driving too hard and you need to back off. If it's too small, you know, like, okay, you had that 1 in a million run where you never wrecked, but if that gap is too small, you should really be pushing yourself harder, in my opinion. You should be trying to find more corner speed, you know, trying to scrub a little more on the jumps or this or that.
No, I know holding a line is holding a line, but I was driving 4-wheel drive this year at the J Constance Nationals, and I was pushing about 16 laps. They were pushing 18 with 2-wheel drives. They were like 2 laps faster with a 2-wheel drive. I'm on how much bike can you actually have to the tires? It's a lot more than just, you know, it's tires, it's suspension, it's...
Yeah. So another kind of cliche, but I think a good rule of thumb, any driver's performance, from Mayfield to a rookie, in my opinion, is 50% driver, 25% tires, and 25% everything else. So it's 50% you, it's 50% your tires, or I'm sorry, 50% you, 25% tires, and then 25% rear motor or mid motor, 25% 1A or 1B front length, 25% washer or 2 washer, you know what I mean? Like all of that setup stuff, all of the stuff that we focus in on the car is really only that last 25%. So the big gap between, you know, a D and an A final is going to be driver, of course, and then tires. And the best thing, when you're off the pace, when it's like, all right, I don't, you know, my car feels okay, I feel like I'm driving well, and I don't have the lap time, I think you got to look at tires. So I know at RC Excitement, like indoor racing especially, is a huge tire game. In RC Excitement especially, those guys at J Concepts, I know from, because I do this too, we're going back and forth from greens to blues depending on track, and we're putting traction compound on like crazy. You know, we're putting, like, you come off the track, you clean your tires, you dope them, you put them in a bag. You pull them out 5 minutes before you run, you throw them on the car, you go out there. You know, and you got to have the right stuff with the, you know, with the right application, the right foam, like all that stuff. Like your tires matter as much as anything else on your car. And so if you're off the pace that much, it's either you or your tires. And, you know, as long as your car doesn't feel whack and you're not wrecking every other corner.
Those percentages, 50% driver, 25% tires, 25% everything else, including the brand of car, that comes straight from Kinwall. Brian drove for us for 5 years and became a teacher like we've never had before. We learned so much from Brian, it's crazy. We're still friends with him today.
Specifically at the at that JC race in RC Excitement, we're using oh, what is it? It's the penetrating oil. It's the blue, dark blue label penetrating. No, it's not WD-40. Liquid wrench penetrating oil. And I'll tell you, liquid wrench penetrating oil is different than WD-40. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like they're different on the track.
If you have the wrong traction compound, you may as well not be using it.
Half the time. And I can also say that with a penetrating oil style thing like WD-40 or the liquid wrench stuff, whatever, like the more that gets in the track, the more necessary it is to have on your tires, because like anything else you put on your tires is going to make your stuff slide and like you'll actually be down on traction compared to everybody else. It's like once people start running that, it's like this kind of like wildfire goes through the pits. You know, it's like, oh, who's running what? You know, you're like, especially through the practice days, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at any kind of big race, you're always watching out for that. So like, you know, to go to Reedy race that I just came back from, they actually had a spec tire compound stuff. Like they had a table with supplied stuff, and you were not allowed to put anything on your tires. You had to clean them in the specified bin and put that stuff on them. And I actually kind of liked it. It was a handout tire race, you know, complete spec everything. And they controlled it that tightly to kind of even the playing field. It was nice to not have to be running around worried about that stuff. It's another reason I like the Ohio RC factory where the midwinter's held, is because we haven't found a traction compound that works there. Like you just wire brush your tires. Like I don't even clean them. Wire brush them, run them dry, and it's good.
Paul will go to most big races with a black box full of tires, so that he's got the right tire every time he's on the track.
I'm also going to pull out, don't need to pass it around, but there's a bag of everything from Fast Guy to Renos to zip-free 2, you know.
If you're not running the right traction compound,
You know.
you have to have
And
the
again,
right stuff.
It all comes back to that, like I said, it's 50% driver, so obviously Mayfield is Mayfield. You know, he's going to run his laps. But tires can be a big thing. If you feel like your car's good and you feel like you're driving well and you've got your lines down and you're only wrecking once or twice and you're able to push it and you're still off a lot, like to me that, you know, tires are what's going to be your biggest improvement at that point.
Another thing is a lot of people don't know about what is the difference between rear motor and mid motor as far as advantages on the car.
Okay, so there's the physical difference. Rear motor simply refers to the motor being behind the axle, right? Standard like B4, Oshie 22 rear motor layout, right? Mid motor's mid motor.